Hi everyone, welcome and thanks so much for joining me today at this virtual edition of the Leeds Digital Festival. Hope everyone's had a chance to listen to plenty more talks and that they've all been enjoyable. I just want to do a quick introduction and then we'll dive straight in. So just a little bit about me. My name's Amy Stokes-Waters. I'm doing my posh phone voice for this webinar, but hopefully you can hear the Yorkshire accent coming through loud and clear. I think this remote working it's been pretty good recently for us, and it's definitely letting us open up the Leeds Digital Festival to those poor people who don't live in Yorkshire, and giving us the opportunity to showcase all of our Yorkshire talent to a much wider audience. So that's been fantastic. I'm hoping that we've flipped that stereotype that we're all a bit thick up north. I know a lot of the webinars that I've been tuning into have been really showing the kind of innovative thinking, creativity, and all the interesting personalities that I think Yorkshire's really famous for. So thank you everyone else who has also joined in with this brilliant festival. So a little bit about me. I'm on the wrong side of 30. I've got a 2-year-old, so if you hear her in the background, excuse that. She's probably just escaped from my dad. I've been working at Identity Experts for just over a year. I work in the technical sales team and I really can't imagine working in any other industry. I think cybersecurity has really been a revelation for me, career-wise, and it does help that I work for a really great company. So thanks to Identity Experts for having me as well. So who are Identity Experts? Well, we are a Microsoft Gold partner in security. So if I do sound a bit like a Microsoft fangirl as I'm talking through this, that's because I am. No shame here. As an organisation, we work to secure companies against cyber threats, primarily through giving them a really strong identity solution. So things like automating processes, consolidating identity silos, helping to improve user experience, things like single sign-on, self-service password reset, MFA obviously. But we do also cover the full Microsoft security stack. So that's everything from DLP using Microsoft Information Protection, MDM with Intune, threat protection with ATP, through to the cloud SIEM technology with Azure Sentinel. So we really are supporting those digital transformations in a holistic way. But for today, I'm going to try to stay away from talking too much about products, and we'll hopefully be talking a bit more about the concepts or solution areas that help us to secure those digital transformations. So let's have a look at what's on the agenda. So we're going to start off with looking at where we are now. Then take a bit of a deep dive into what it is that we're securing, so the data and where that might be. Then we're going to walk through some key areas around security. So I would like to cover identities, privileges or access. Then we'll finish off with devices. Hopefully, we'll finish off with a few questions from you guys as well. I'll try and look at the Q&A box as we're talking, but I'm only on one screen, so bear with me if I don't see them straight away. But I'll try and have a look at them as we're going through, and then we'll wrap up. So let's get started. So this is the right kind of Zoom. I don't know if you've used Zooms on PowerPoint before. That was just a little bit of a dig at Zoom there, but we'll try not to go too much into that. So let's just have a look at where we are now. So what is digital transformation? Let's start there. So a lot of people think it means just moving some stuff into the cloud, but really I think it's a lot more than that. It's about embracing all those new technologies. Yes, they are all cloud focused, but we're not just talking about doing a straight lift and shift into Azure, although that kind of project is actually fairly common when we do talk around digital transformation. But what it really means is it's actually a continuous assessment of the cloud technologies that we've got available to us, and then embracing those into your business as and when they become relevant for you. So, most people have probably made the jump to the cloud in some form or another, and if they hadn't done it before the 23rd of March, I'm going to pretty much guarantee that there's probably some form of cloud computing going on in your businesses right now, especially as we're all working from home. But when we talk about the cloud, it's quite big. There's a lot you can do with it. Organisations are expanding their horizons beyond just making email available at home. Office 365 migrations, they're old news now. There's not very many companies still using Office desktop. I think the next big thing that's hitting businesses really is machine learning or artificial intelligence, if you think that's a thing, but that's a whole other debate. But realistically, it's a world away from just pushing your file server onto SharePoint, SharePoint Online, that is. We know digital transformation projects can differ by industry. So for retail, it might mean something like introducing an e-commerce platform. For a university, it might be the digitisation of your library services or allowing students to remote into lectures. I've seen quite a lot of questions around that recently, especially with Teams capabilities. I think they've just increased the number of live events to 60 for education customers. So if there's any of you guys out there struggling with that, feel free to drop us a line and we can chat about that as well. But today I'm going to try and keep it fairly straightforward. We know there's a lot of variations as to what digital transformation means, but for the purposes of this webinar, we'll stick to, we've put some data in the cloud, I guess, so the basic definition. So let's think about where we are now. Hopefully we're all at home so with COVID-19, it's forced us all to work from home. So as you can see, our people are moving from the office into their homes, hopefully not in a big group like this, unless they're all self-isolating together, in which case that is fine. And as people have moved home, what else has moved with them? Well, devices have gone with them, haven't they? And because we've all moved out of this office environment, we've had to ditch the desktops that were in our office. And we need access to some applications. So where have we put the applications? Well, if they're on premise, we've had to either make them accessible in the office via a VPN, or we've just shifted them into the cloud. So where does this leave businesses? In the short term, as the coronavirus pandemic continues, it means that we're having to secure rapid digital transformation. So it's likely that we've quickly implemented some remote working capabilities. We need to think about whether we've secured those environments properly. Are staff using their own devices? What data can people access? Have we secured their identities? So there's a few things to consider there. There's also some employee health risks. So obviously staff are working in areas affected by coronavirus. Are they likely to be off work? That's obviously a bit of an issue, and try to understand that. Have we got furloughed staff? So I know a lot of people have furloughed some of their workforce. If you're leaving your office licenses active while they're not at work, there's a potential security risk there, as well as unnecessary spend on those licenses when we're not using them. There's also the issue around maintaining productivity. So as we move to using more collaboration tools like Teams, we want to ensure that those users are able to remain as productive as they were while they were in the office. In the longer term, we think the new normal will leave us with more remote workers, obviously, and a workforce that are probably using a more diverse range of devices. So the challenges that we might see there are employee engagement, so ensuring our staff are engaging with IT capabilities. If we want to roll out new solutions, we need to ensure that users are adopting those solutions. It would be good if we could monitor the usage of any new technologies, if we could use data on consumption to drive our adoption and change management processes potentially. There's also we've done a few. We're writing a white paper, about where we think the new normal is going to go. So we've had some feedback from businesses where they've said they're looking to potentially automate more processes. So that might be repetitive or administrative tasks, or it could be things related to identity and security as well. So capabilities like automated incident response, where we can use tools to remediate common threats like phishing attacks. They're quite a good candidate for that automation piece, as well as the joiner mover leaver process in terms of our identities, because that takes pressure off the service desk, and it removes that risk of human error with provisioning and deprovisioning accounts as well. We'll also want to look at things like better management of licensing. So it's expected that as we move into the new normal way of working, we'll be seeing some shifting priorities. Spending is likely to be a bit more reserved, and I'd imagine that a lot of organisations will be looking to evaluate the overheads that they've got. So they'll need a solution that can help optimise licensing and cloud estates to ensure they're not spending unnecessarily. Better management of other resources as well. So it's not just virtual property that people will be looking to optimise. We've also got to consider the fact that our office space is likely to be emptier We'll want to understand how productive our employees are from home, and whether when we come out the other side of this, will we need to have the same amount of physical office space? Could we expand our workforce from a home working viewpoint, rather than expanding our physical office space to accommodate any new staff that we bring on? So what kind of projects can help alleviate some of these challenges? Well, we've got solutions around all of these things, but as you know, this isn't a sales pitch, so I'm not gonna name them. But the kinds of things you could be doing are automating your join and move a leaver process. So we can tick off automated processes with that one. We can use it to improve our management of licenses. And also it gives you a tick in the box for securing those staff accounts. We could look to move to an integrated cloud identity and mobile device management solution. So something like Azure AD with Intune, but other MDM solutions are available. You can use these kind of things to secure your digital transformation, facilitating that remote working that we need to allow users to maintain that productivity from home, but also ensure that data security at the same time. Finally, there's the fact that we want to leverage cloud data. So there's a lot of data available in the cloud. We work with a really clever partner called IT Exact, who have a solution that does fit around just about every area that's mentioned on here. But they're just pulling data from the cloud, so it can support the resolution of the majority of these issues. So understanding whether your users are productive, checking out the usage stats on Teams and OneDrive, giving you better management of resources, and if staff are better at home. If staff are more productive at home, then you can leave them there and downsize your office, which leads us to, what does the new normal look like? Well, from our research that we've done so far, and using a bit of common sense, I guess, we expect that more services will move into the cloud. So like we've said, a lot of people are doing a lift and shift straight into public cloud. So whether that's Azure or AWS or the Google one. There's a lot of companies I've spoken to who are working in private cloud currently, and they're looking to migrate their services over into Azure as well. So we do expect that public cloud area to grow. We don't think it will be the demise of the office, but potentially we're looking at a smaller amount of people working there, less people in there full time. So the cloud piece and the home piece, forgot to click on the slide there. The cloud piece and the home piece, we're expecting to grow, or at least set to stay, especially since we've been told we may have to social distance for over a year. I expect it'll be difficult to get everyone back into the office, and businesses will see that that they can save money and not having to have lots of that physical office space. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an overview of where we think we're going. But let's dive into what we're here to talk around today, so how we can secure our digital transformation. So let's look at data. So when we move to the cloud, what is it that we're protecting? Hopefully you're all saying the word data right now, because that's the answer that I've got. Data, it's our most valuable commodity, not just because it's the lifeblood of our business, but because if we don't look after it, then we can be hit with big fines. No one wants the ICO coming knocking at the door, but we can also have the reputational damage to contend with. No one wants to be a Marriott or an Equifax. I'm guessing you don't want to be one. Anyway, so what do we need to consider with our data? Well, first of all, we need to understand what it is. So every bit of data we have isn't sensitive, but information about our customers, top secret projects, plans to take over the world, if they fall into the wrong hands, we could be in a bit of a difficult position. But when we're protecting data, we really need to understand what it is that we're protecting. So like this quote says, if you're protecting your diamonds and paper clips with equal vigor, you'll have more paper clips and fewer diamonds. So if we protect our super sensitive data and our non-sensitive data with the same levels of protection, the sensitive data is probably going to get leaked. So we need to have a more layered approach to data protection. So using a DLP tool, you can add labels to data, and then you can use that to apply policies to documents based on those labels. So even just the labeling bit, if that's where you want to start, that's really important, because it makes staff really think about the data that they're using, and they'll start to handle it differently, even just subconsciously. If you label a document as internal, it might make you think, oh, I really shouldn't be sending this out to anyone. you can apply policies later on to enforce those rules. So there's things that you can do where if a document's labelled as internal and you try to send it out to someone who's not within your domain, then that'll get blocked. So yeah, I think the data piece, it does rely a lot on user adoption more than some of the other technologies we can put in place to secure our digital transformation, because obviously data is handled by employees every day. So it's a bit of a journey that you need to take people on, but we'd recommend always starting with the labelling piece and then applying policies afterwards to enforce those rules. Another key thing when looking at data is understanding how the applications we use access our data. So I'm pretty sure when you download applications, you all get a data privacy notice, you know, that everyone scrolls to the bottom of and just clicks OK. Can pretty much guarantee no one reads them, but we do know that they're kind of important. So if we look at apps like Zoom, we know the kind of issues we can get into if we don't do that application due diligence. There's vulnerabilities in applications that can open up our environments to a whole host of issues, things like data exfiltration, malware, credential theft. And then there's obviously the unexpected consequences of some of these application insecurities. Saw a post on LinkedIn the other day saying, don't use Zoom if you're discussing something that you wouldn't talk to your friend about in the pub. Which I guess makes sense, but I don't know about you, but when I'm in the pub talking about what cocktail I'm going to get next or what happened on EastEnders last night, don't expect someone to interrupt me with racist comments or their genitalia. So I'm not sure that the logic applies necessarily for me anyway. My thinking personally is that if there's more secure options out there, I'd rather go down that route. I mean, in terms of video conferencing, I do think Teams is the best option. It only uses data that it needs for the service. It doesn't dig about in your computer for whatever else it might want to look at. So for me, Teams is the way to go. So key takeaways here are: check the privacy notices, use trusted applications, and obviously don't show your private parts to other people on Zoom. That would be a bonus. Right, the next thing we're going to chat about is identities. So being from a company called Identity Experts, it might not be a huge surprise that identity is quite high on my priority list when it comes to talking to customers about how to secure their IT environments. Obviously, as we're working from home, we need to be more sure than ever that our digital identity should reflect our real identity. So we want it to reflect who we really are. Retail, I guess, was one of the first industries to adopt this kind of thinking with their e-commerce platforms. There was a big onus on them to ensure that credit card fraud wasn't happening just because someone had access to someone else's credit card. I bank with NatWest, and if I try to buy something from a new website or something that's fairly high value, it asks me for a password as well. So it's checking that you know, I am who I say I am, and it's not just my mum who's robbed my credit card and decided to buy herself a new pair of shoes. I guess it's kind of it's the e-commerce way of doing multi-factor authentication. And as data becomes more accessible from anywhere, like we've said, we need to know the person logging in is who they say they are. Otherwise, we could be opening ourselves up to a lot of big risks. So previously, when we protected our network, our security team only had to manage what went on inside our four walls. So you can see this nice office building on the right hand side. So usually a good firewall, router, the door pass did the trick. But now we've got a myriad of applications that we're accessing. So it might be finance apps, service desk, video conferencing. We've got Office 365, we've got our emails. You might have a CRM system. So there's all these different applications. They're also being accessed on multiple devices. And our users are based anywhere in the world, I guess. So they're not accessing it from your corporate network. They're not accessing any of this information from inside the four walls of your office. So the networks that we're now connecting to are things like, you know, I'm sure your very, very secure home broadband, or the also sure very secure Starbucks Wi-Fi or service station or 4G from your mobile. So the only thing really that's consistent across all of these things is our identity. And that's where identities become sort of the real control plane for our SecOps teams to manage the security of our estate. So I just wanted to show you a quick screen recording that I did this morning. So 80% of breaches are credential related. There's 14 billion credentials out there on the web in plain text. And if they're not out there, someone's probably trying to phish them from you. So I'm going to show you a quick screen recording from a website that I went on called haveibeenpwned.com. It's to check whether your email has been compromised. So I went on there and I typed in my work email address. And fortunately, it came back that there had been no compromise of my work email. You should all go and try this at home as well. Then went on and typed in my personal email address, which unfortunately has. So this is the kind of information the website gives you. It shows you exactly which breaches your information is being breached in. Unfortunately, mine got done in LinkedIn, which is annoying to say the least because I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So I felt a bit cheated by LinkedIn, but never mind. But yeah, it's definitely worth having a look on there just to see whether any of your credentials have been compromised. I have got multi-factor authentication enabled on my personal email address, so I've changed my password, so it's all good. But that's what we'd recommend doing if that does happen to you. So as we've mentioned, one of the major risks we have around identities is phishing. So as an example, we might start with a phishing attack. So someone spoofs your domain, they're pretending to be your IT team saying something like, we've got a new payment system in and you're not going to get paid by payroll unless you fill your details into this website. That's how they get your credentials. So we've got credential theft. This type of attack accounts for 80% of all breaches. So it's pretty serious. Once a hacker's got your credentials, there's a few routes they can take. So depending on your status in the company, I guess, what you have access to and how well secured your environment is, things can go quickly wrong. So if you're the CEO or the CFO, you might already have the keys to the castle in your inbox or your OneDrive or your CRM system. So the hacker can just exfiltrate data directly from there, sell it on, job done, big bucks. Or it might be that you're not that much of an interesting target for a hacker. So no offense to Barbara on reception, but you know, if there's limited visibility of the threats in your network, then someone could hack into Barbara on reception's account and then move laterally around that network until they find someone who does have something valuable. So it could be an unsecured admin account or a server you've not got the right protection on. Then you can get hit with big things like ransomware, which obviously no one wants to happen. However it does happen, if you've become prey to a phishing attack, then there's a potential for that hacker to gain some valuable information. So it's important to try and stop them in their tracks and build some barriers to this type of attack. So how do we protect our identities? Well, the most obvious one is multi-factor authentication. It stops 99.9% of credential-based attacks. So the way it works is by having something that you are, so your username, something that you know, so your password, and something that you have, so your phone usually. So it sends a text message or calls you, so you know the system can authenticate that it's you. There's also authenticator applications available, so you can use biometric authentication with a mobile device to add that extra layer of security. Every time I talk about biometric authentication, someone comes and asks me whether it's safe. So as long as you're using a reputable provider, so if you know, Apple, Windows Hello, Microsoft Authenticator, then yes, I would say it's safe. They don't store the biometric data on a big server in the cloud. So no one's going to hack into Apple and pick up your fingerprints or your retina scans, so you don't have to scoop out your own eyeball or have a finger transplant like a really boring version of face-off film, just to maintain your data security. So what happens with these kind of biometric prints is that they store a hash of the biometric print in the TPM chip on your device. So when you use your fingerprint, the access token is released from that TPM chip and that shoots off to the authentication server in the cloud. If the token matches what's on that server, then it authenticates you. If it doesn't, then you're not allowed in, and that's that. So the key takeaway from the identity piece is to switch MFA on, use trusted sources of biometrics where possible. Hopefully this is all making sense to everyone. So let's talk next about privileges. So we can refer to this as access as well. So it's the letter A in our IAM acronym. Oh, sorry. But I think the word privilege has better connotation. So, you know, it's a privilege to be allowed to view the data or resources you've got access to. It's not something that you should have access to. It's yeah, like I said, it's a privilege to get that. So when we talk about privilege, what we really mean is, what do people have access to? So what are they privileged enough to get into with their user accounts? So a lot of organisations, surprisingly, they struggle to know what people can and can't do within their IT environment, which is a bit of I guess, a scary place to be in. This is where a really good join a mover leaver process comes into place. If we can automate that where possible, it reduces the risk of human error, and it takes a lot of the time pressures off of your off of the service desk team, whose job it usually is to provision and deprovision accounts. It ensures that people only have access to applications, resources, or groups that they need to use for their role. So, for example, if a new person starts at your business and they're in the finance team, they'll probably need access to applications like invoicing system or an expenses system, you know, things that the rest of the finance team have. And that's an example of role-based access control, or RBAC. But there's also ABAC, which is attribute-based access control. So that might be something like, if you've got multiple offices, you might have specific distribution groups for those offices for specific events that are going on at that office. So if every Friday the people in the Leeds office all go for a pint at Wetherspoons, then you might want to send an email around, you know, including people in that, or it might be health and safety specific information for that office, so where the fire doors are and when the fire alarm's going to go off, or whatever it might be. But you might want to include employees in those distribution groups based on the office that they're in. So that's how attribute-based access control works. So they're the two types of access control. But what about the methods of using them? So there's automated. So that's where, you know, an identity management solution usually picks up a user's profile. It can grant access to distribution groups, security groups, apps, resources based on the information that it knows about an individual. So that would be automated access control. But there's also manual access as well. So when a person doesn't quite fit the mold, or where a distribution or a security group or a privilege is a temporary one. So, you know, for a specific project, it might be that you've got a developer who needs admin access to a specific application so that they can extend part of the functionality of that app, as an example. In that type of scenario, they'd only need access for the length of time that the project's on. So users, you know, they could be potentially able to request access to join a group, or to have their privileges elevated via a self-service portal, or potentially given access manually by an IT team at the request of a project manager, for example. But it's these kind of manually granted privileges which often cause issues with the data security model. So when people forget to remove those privileges at the end of a project, that's where we can come into some issues. So that's where attestation comes in. So attestation, you might have heard of it as recertification. That's what every organisation should really be doing to understand whether users need the privileges that they've currently got. And it can be quite difficult to get it right. I've been into some organisations where they have teams that are employed solely to sit and review access on a cyclical basis for all employees. So they were sitting for 3 months, checking everyone's access, and then once the 3 months is over, they were starting again with that spreadsheet and then checking all the access again. Sounds like a really boring job, and it's definitely not what we'd recommend people doing. I think a better solution, both for the employees' mental health probably, and for the organisation security, is if we've got on-premises data, you can usually leverage your IAM solution. So, you know, Microsoft Identity Manager has got attestation processes that you can build into it. Or for cloud-based solutions, then if they're integrated into Azure Active Directory, you can use things like entitlement management and access reviews. You can quickly and easily decide who needs access to a particular resource or application. There's a little screenshot there for you. We'd recommend asking people like the line manager or maybe the application owner to decide who needs access to what, because they'll probably have more information about what a particular employee's role requires, more than the IT team do, and it helps to spread that load across the business as well. So it's not just one person or one team's responsibility to do it. It's a joint effort. The final area I want to cover here is privileged identity management. So what do we mean by this? Well, it's anyone with admin credentials, so either for apps, servers, or for granting privileged access for other users as well. As we move our data to the cloud and we have more SaaS applications, more cloud infrastructure, other cloud technologies we can manage, we need someone with the ability to manage them all. So someone needs to have access to be able to do all that. So we've got global admin accounts. They usually have the keys to the castle. They can unlock doors around the whole IT estate just with the username and password. I'm sure several times you've tried to download something on your laptop when you're at home and it's come up and said you need an admin username. So that's what that is. A lot of organisations are still using a separate admin account and a user account for their administrative users as a way of managing that infrastructure. But when those admin accounts are constantly switched on, it's a constant risk to the business. They're always a massive target for hackers. Whenever we switch on things like Office 365 ATP, it's always Office 365 ATP. It's always the global admin accounts or the IT team that are the subject of phishing campaigns. We see a massive spike in them for global admins. So they're constantly trying to get hit with targeted campaigns, trying to gain those all-important admin credentials. But what if we told you there was a different way of doing it? So I've said I wasn't going to push products too much, but Azure AD is pretty cool and it does all this good stuff. So using Azure AD, which the majority of people are probably out there using already anyway, you can implement privileged identity management, which gives you just enough access just in time. So that means you can request for your regular user account to have privileges elevated to let you perform tasks that you need to do to fix a server or play around with Intune or whatever it is you need to do. But you can elevate those credentials for just a specific amount of time and only to be able to perform the tasks you need to perform. And all of the actions are then recorded in an audit log when that account's elevated, so that you can review it further down the line, and you can even feed it into your SIEM tool as well. So it's a pretty cool solution, and it stops your admins needing multiple accounts as well. So it's reducing the risk as the accounts are only privileged for a set amount of time, and you can put approvals in place, and it means you can keep the number of global admin accounts at a minimum. So Microsoft recommend a maximum of 5 GA accounts. So it helps you to do all that as well. And then the final piece in the puzzle I want to look at is devices. So when we're talking about devices, the first thing we need to look at is our device estate. So what devices do our employees have that they'll be accessing corporate data on? So obviously it's going to include things like desktops, laptops and mobiles that you've provided to your users. And they might even have, a tablet if they're fancy and like to read the slides on an iPad or the newspaper or whatever it is. But if we think about what other devices staff use that we have no control over. So as we've shifted our employees home, I'm presuming most of you have got employees at home, BYOD usage will have accelerated, especially where businesses can't afford to give all their users a device. So when we're talking about BYOD, it's not just laptops. When I speak to customers, they always tell me, oh, we haven't got any BYOD. Everyone just uses the laptop that I give them. But it doesn't just mean laptops. It also means mobile devices as well. So any mobile device that you're accessing emails on counts as a BYOD device. It's often overlooked when we're considering the device estate, but it can actually account for a bigger percentage of our devices and corporate owned. If you look at all of the ways that the end users will be accessing email. Even if we're just looking at that one element of it. So how do we secure it? One of the first things we need to invest in is a mobile device management or MDM solution. So I'm a Microsoft girl, as I told you. So for me, Intune is the way to go. There are other MDM solutions out there, but I don't want to talk about them because I like Intune. So that's what we're going to go with. So what does an MDM solution do? Well, it lets you put controls onto mobile devices that enable users to work securely, keeps your data safe, and it gives your infosec team or cybersecurity team, I'm not going to get into the debate about what it's called, infosec cybersecurity team, gives them peace of mind to make sure your data is secure. So when we're working with an MDM solution, the first thing we want to look at is whether we're securing our data on a corporate or a BYOD device. So Intune allows you to differentiate between the two. It provides options for stricter controls for corporate devices and less strict controls on personal devices. So once you enroll your corporate device into Intune, you can do things like create configuration policies. So you can modify the settings on the device. So you can make sure it's got a specific operating system on there. It might need to have an 8-digit PIN. You can change the settings on that device and decide what makes it compliant or not compliant. You can also push out or block specific applications. So if you don't want people on their work phone using WhatsApp, you can block them from using it. And it also lets you perform a full device wipe. So if the device is lost or stolen, you can get rid of all the data on that device. So when it comes to BYOD, your options are a bit more limited. Users don't want the workplace to see all the data on their personal mobile. And personally, I wouldn't want work being able to remotely wipe my entire device. I've got 10,000 pictures or more of my 2-year-old on my phone. I'm not ashamed to say. I wouldn't want anyone to wipe all that off. So that's where mobile application management comes in. So MAM is the short way of saying it. So that's not mum in Yorkshire speak, it is an actual acronym, I promise. MAM policies, they can be created to be used on both corporate and BYOD devices, but they're used to protect an organisation's data within a specific application. So as an example, I've got Outlook application on my phone. It contains all my work emails, my contacts. I personally have got no interest in corporate espionage, but if I did, my organisation has had the foresight to put policies on there which block me from being able to copy and paste data from a corporate application, so one that I sign into with my work credentials, to any personal application. So I can't copy data from an email into the notes on my iPhone, for example. So that's one of the ways that data can be protected. And as I mentioned before, people don't want employers having access to remote wipe the device. So that's where the ability to selectively wipe devices comes in. So when we're using MAM policies, companies can choose to just wipe the corporate device off of data. So corporate data off a device. Sorry. So if I left Identity Experts, not that I'm planning to do if my boss is listening, but if I did leave, the company would be able to just wipe the corporate data off my device, and it would leave the rest of my device alone. So that was a very high-level introduction to basic MDM and MAM capabilities. Most people have got MDM solutions in place. I think when we're talking to customers, most people have got Intune in there. So it might just be something that you potentially need to roll out a bit further or look into a bit more. I think that's it for now. So has anyone got any questions? I will check the question box. Doesn't look like it so far, but thank you everyone for listening today. It's been an absolute pleasure presenting, and I hope we'll see you soon. Thanks very much, guys.